It's October the 13th, 2024. I'm going to be your host tonight. I'm Dana. Welcome, everybody. Hope you're having a good day. And you can call in 709-589-4406. We're in Canada. And if you call anywhere in the United States or New Mexico, I can work with that. There's a PayPal link in the description, at the very bottom of the description. And there's links to my store there too, where you can buy t-shirts. For some reason I haven't sold anything, and there is one, I think, one there I got to check tomorrow, a while back. But it's weird how we couldn't put up any new shirts or anything like that, and then nobody bought any shirts. And here we go. The last show, let's talk about that for a minute, was hour 55 and 11 seconds, the 67th anniversary wind scale, Sellafield, Betrayal. We had a poll on that too, by the way, and the poll was, did the United Kingdom cover up damage to wind scale nuclear meltdown, considering every kid has plutonium in their teeth? It's a really good presentation. And okay, so you got, it was hour 55, 12 hours later my videos magically get longer. Nobody else's does, I noticed. It's 9 seconds longer. We're worried about what's going on. This has been going on since I had this site, but nobody else's videos does that. 12 hours later, and then the comments section will show up 12 hours later also in the live chat. Hi everybody, by the way. Everybody. Okay. So we're going to cover a single story from March the 17th, I believe. Yeah, March the 17th, 2011. It's going to take us the whole show, I would imagine. I do have some other stuff at the end of it when we finally get through it. They told so many lies, you can't keep up with it. Of course, they get a Nobel Prize, right, for doing that, the journalists do. How do you like the little man in the paper suit in his arm? I'm getting better. I'm definitely getting better. So there's a lot of pictures I've created today and last night are going to be here tonight. Courage to the Fukushima 50 is suicide amidst the workers trying to avert a catastrophe. This is suicide. And the journalist's job was to come out, interview with apologists, and tell you sweet little lies that are lethal. And they get a lot of pleasure out of it. They make a lot of money out of it. It's simple. They just got to quote. The journalist quotes the scientist, allegedly. And the journalist makes enough to get a new swimming pool and buys kids college fees, pays kids college fees and everything else. But just writing 4 or 5 paragraphs. I sit here for 2 hours and go through a presentation, and I'm despised and hated and feared and scorned. And so their job is to come out and make you feel comfortable, make you feel complacent, actually. When the reactors were actually, and this story on the 17th, reactor 4 looked like that, reactor 3 looked like that, reactor 2 and 1 had melted down also. And on top of these buildings were 2 fuel pools on top of each of the 4 buildings. We also lost those inventories too, which is around 4 reactor cores per fuel pool. So there's 8 fuel pools with 4 at least, if not more, because you don't have a repository anywhere on the planet, let alone Japan, to store the extra nuclear fuel. And so what do you do with all the nuclear fuel over 40 years? You only have one building that's dedicated to all 6 reactors' fuel capacities. So you take the fuel out of it, and when you cool down, you'll put some of it in what's known as the common spent fuel pool. And those pictures were redacted of that facility, which is right beyond Reactor 4, in a set of new pictures that were released in 2021 on the just before the 10th anniversary. But with no fanfare, nobody covered those pictures, only us. And I say us, I mean the people that are here are aware. And you wouldn't have found them anywhere else. You would have found them right here, unfortunately. I found them on a Chinese media that I had translated on a story about Fukushima. And I couldn't wrap my mind around it. It was drone pictures. And when we zoomed in, we seen all of this was pixelated from the original footage. This is several weeks later. And you know that because you can see the useless cement truck up in the top left-hand side. And so this was what we call Medusa, affectionately known as Medusa. It's a plutonium mixed oxide fuel reactor. This is using reclaimed uranium plutonium. It's much worse than the other reactors. And all these buildings lost around 8 reactor cores from the fuel pools from each building. But, you know, you can go 4.5 reactor cores, 5 reactor cores for fuel pool, and you probably wouldn't be wrong. But generally, you're talking about around 6 million pounds of fuel, uranium, plutonium, was in each building that was lost. Nuclear workers accept their fate like a death sentence. Nobody accepts their fate like a death sentence. But the media comes out, they're always very handsome and pretty. They're very well dressed. They're polished. They got all kinds of degrees and everything. But their job is to come out and lull you into very dangerous complacency. One expert says it is perhaps a suicide mission. Well, let's have a look at the facility. Now, the facility blew up. This was Reactor 3 blowing up. Now, that was a plume covered the whole planet. A continuous plume, like a snowstorm. Imagine a snowstorm covering the planet and never stops snowing and never melts, and it never goes away, it never melts. And flip that and call it radiation. This is what we talk about: is everything that's introduced into the biosphere never goes away. That's even when it decays down to lead, it's still radioactive, anthropogenic lead. So to the microorganism, it still has some scary attributes. So, because everything on this planet, all species, 8 million species, humans included, nothing has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. And what that means is it's very harmful to everything. So remember that in this story tonight, and that the fuel, millions of pounds being ejected out of the buildings, landing all over the site, you're not going in there. It's not a suicide mission because you're not going in there. You can't get near it. It's a suicide mission, but everybody knows you're not going near that. And so the journalist's job is to pretend they're superheroes, literally. They get all kinds of awards for being... it's outrageous what they do, right? They misrepresent it to the point where... this is an event that covered the whole planet and affected 8 million species. They write 4 or 5 paragraphs, the rest of the media regurgitates it, and the whole world doesn't appreciate the dire consequences of what's happening. So we don't come up with solutions because... I don't know if I got an example I could use, but... when the submergible... I'm going to talk about Tesla in a few seconds. But you remember when that submergible sank in the ocean last year off our coastline, we're in Canada here, out by the Titanic? And there was academics from all over the world saying, well, you can try this and you can try that, and we can send you this and we can send you that. We still got 36 hours. And the whole world was coming up with ideas. You would read all the comments sections. There was all these incredible ideas, right? We were denied that ability for Fukushima. We were denied that ability. They had great pleasure in just destroying possibilities and legacies and the future of us. But that's what the nuclear industry the radioactive fallout guarantees everything is going to have adverse effects for the rest of their lives if they survive the initial onslaught, which is incredible. And it's been going on for 80 years. So let's talk about Tesla for a second. I just want to, because Tesla got a robot, they got a car, they got Optimus, a Wii robot or whatever. Wii robot. They got iRobot with Apple, Wii robot with Tesla. I think it's really wrong for them to use those particular names because that's a communal name for everybody on the planet, not for a corporation. And not for one that is trying to introduce. So they're saying they're a robot, they're a humanoid robot, which is 6 feet tall, by the way. Very imposing to a child, right? You can use it to babysit your children. Now, first off, I'm pretty sure it's illegal to leave a robot in charge of your children. Not that anybody's ever acknowledged that in the last 24 hours that I've seen. Whatever my first impression was, well, I'm sure it's illegal because he says you can let a robot, whatever you want, babysit your children, right? And then it feeds them all the nonsense also on top of that from the United Nations, the military, which is the military-industrial complex, I'm sure, right? But anyway, one of the most important things you can do is don't use Google. Here I am, I got you on Google. I'm going to apologize for that. But don't use it for things you can use something else if you can. Okay, so the robot, there's all kinds of, who knows for sure. But anyway, the robot was allowed to go and wander into the crowd, but it wasn't the robot that was talking. Clearly, that wasn't going on. If you listen to all the robots, you realize what's going on. Is there's somebody on the other side. So the AI for that is not operational, I guess, right? And it's coming, though. And so they had somebody that was remotely talking to people who thought they were actually talking to Tesla's new robot, and they didn't tell them the difference. And I think that's unbelievably dishonest way to introduce humanoid robots into the population, where Elon Musk suggested strongly that this would be the biggest product ever produced on the planet. So it'll be bigger than sliced bread, it's bigger than toasters, it's bigger than automobiles. Like, everybody's going to have one. So if everybody got a TV, everybody's going to have a Tesla or whatever humanoid robot. So that was a really interesting, and you had all the media there. It was the weirdest experience, because here was the media just cheering it on. It was just pandering. It was really something, groveling, really. And it was the same thing with they had this robot type bus where like 20 people got off, and they were waving to the journalists, and they were all proud of themselves. It was really something. And those people are these types of people inside, right? That's what they're really like. If you interview these, it's like the guy in the white coat there. They're these types of people. And then they have a robot taxi. Taxi has no steering wheel, no foot pedals. You can't take control. So like it or not, even if something's going wrong, you've got to put your faith in this machine. You can't correct it. And that's a very... and you can't accidentally grab it and disengage it for safety reasons. I don't know, right, if that's a great idea, but that's what they're doing. And so you're pretty helpless. If you're inebriated, is it going to take you to the police station? If you're arguing with your girlfriend, is it going to take you to the police station? If your girlfriend is arguing with you, will it take her to the police station, for instance? Will it have detectors on it? So if you happen to have some recreational drugs on you, will it take you to the police station? Because it's going to know that, right? It's going to be surveying your entire body. Your DNA is going to be left in those taxis, by the way. And if you don't read the yellow launch, I'm pretty sure he's going to own a fraction of that DNA and be able to patent it down the road. And then think about, if you got that in the wrong neighborhood, do you really want to get in that taxi after the first day? People are pigs. And you got a lot of people, that's going to be, is it going to sterilize the flu, virus that's going to be into it constantly with all the kids wiping their snotty nose and fingers everywhere? You really think they're going to clean all that? How's that going to work? And, taxis are taxis, and the buses. At some point, someone's going to tell Elon Musk was like, you can fall asleep and wake up when you get to your destination. So I guess he never heard of trains, did he? And when you think about this incredible arrogance that he doesn't actually have the product, but he's completely sure of himself that his way is the only way, and there's no rejecting it, there's no questions allowed, there's no debate allowed. And any descending voices out there, you'll actually see they're severely censored, right? Incredibly censored. They were doing censor me because I'm way too fucking popular to be censored. How many people have I got on my show after a decade? Oh, I got 23 people. Again, that's the favorite number they got from me. Every night it's 23 people. I had 24,800 subscribers for 5 years. Never lost one, never gained one. And then when I was there looking for spiders on a research expedition for months and reporting back on it, they took my site down. And so I had this YouTube you're on right now. It's very suspect. 17th of March 2011. I just wanted to put that out there because I think that's important. That your people who were hoodwinked by Tesla and the robots is that they're not ready to go for who knows how long. And that wasn't artificial intelligence. That was actually somebody on a microphone. And because when you listen to all the robots, you should all have the same voice, right? And they didn't. And they all talk like some friggin' surfer dude. Completely unprofessional. And so they're going to... it's like they're just better than everybody and they do whatever they want. You should just go along with it or praise them like the crazy, pathetic media that was there was doing. It was really something. You had all the mouthpieces, and they were just, they were throwing themselves, they were drooling over this stuff, and so it was meant to build a hype, and I'm pretty sure they did. Let's get after it here. Power will be connected. If you made it this far, consider giving me a thumbs up. Excuse me, my apologies. Oh, what have I got down here? I got no idea. That was weird. Anyway, let's get after this part because I clearly can't get anything to work here tonight. Oh, there she goes. We're on YouTube. I get that. I apologize for that. There's nothing I can do about it. That's the best platform on the planet. It's perfect in all these races. It's the preferred weapon of the enemy. And statistics say that if I don't use it, I'll be making a mistake. So let's get it going here. Power will be connected to the knocked out cooling pumping system within hours. So how are you going to connect power to these buildings that don't exist that are detonated through actual nuclear fuel assemblies, reactor cores all over the place? Really think somebody went in there and connected power? And so you got to be a different type of species, right, to tell it to a journalist who gladly comes out and regurgitates it, despite both of them knows that it's simply incredibly impossible. But in order to give the story credibility, this is what they're going to feed you, right? Radiation levels rise in Japan as the crisis continue. But they're going to connect power to the police system in hours, but the rest of Japan is radioactive. So they just report whatever. And this was the official cover story, and these are what you call the time machine stories, where you look back in time, you take the story, and then you check it for bald-faced lies, aka propaganda. And I do have my new glasses on. I can see every one of you looking. Hey, how's it going? These are incredible. They're very difficult, though, to get used to. But definitely getting better at it now a few days later. It's a bit of a struggle. It's working for this, though, so that's cool. Power will be connected to the knocked-out coolant pumping system within hours. Will be connected to the knocked out. So these people, they present you with this type of, these are the journalists, these are the scientists, and why wouldn't you believe them? You can see she's smiling and totally trustworthy, and he's like, oh yeah, no, the power will be connected to the knocked out pumping system within hours. There really isn't anything to work, but this is what's really going on. Where the journalist is laughing and says, okay, I'll write that. Thank you. And the scientist is like, wait, tell them the power is going to be connected in a few hours. But that's what's going on, though, isn't it? Courage at the Fukushima 50, there's probably been 300 different Fukushima 50 groups altogether. And it's work of trying to avert a catastrophe, that this is suicide. Yeah, tell them it's suicide. We're going to do it, though. But the connecting power, but it's going to be a suicide mission. They're going to sacrifice their lives to save yours and the world, and they're heroes. They're the Fukushima 50s. They made movies about the Fukushima 50s, right? Radioactive steam is still billowing from the reactor's fuel storage pools after the helicopter missions. This is the 17th of March. This is day 6 of the tsunami. All the reactors have exploded by the 16th. And so this is the 17th, the following day. This is United Kingdom media. And they got 2 heads and 2 faces, and both of them are bald-faced monsters. And the journalist is just, that's perfect. I'll write it. I'll do it. Thank you so much. Police water cannons move in to spray overheating fuel rods. Not nuclear scientists or nuclear academics, nuclear corporations, or volunteers from the dozens of other nuclear power plants they have across Japan, the experts, the people that work there every day. No, the police. They probably told the police it was a criminal, and they got to go arrest him. They got to use water cannons, because police are good with water cannons. Everybody knows that. So let's, water. They told the police got water cannons. Tell them the police got water cannons. They're going to spray the overheating fuel. The overheating fuel that doesn't exist. Oh, it's overheating, George. Does it make any sense to you? These are all 100% real photos, by the way. I didn't jimmy any of them up. That's the actual nuclear scientist that said the water cannons are going to move in to spray the overheating fuel rods. If you go anywhere, dear, you're getting a lethal dose. You got reactor cores ejected all over the site. You're getting a lethal dose. And just because you're pro-nuclear don't mean you're immune to radiation. It really doesn't. I know that sounds incredible to the pro-nuclear to think of themselves as gods. Radioactive plume is going to hit the U.S. West Coast tomorrow, but they're connecting power to a building that doesn't exist. Police are going to be there and spray water over it. They're going to connect it, or it's a suicide mission, but they're connecting power within hours. They're really something, aren't they? Like, how do these people operate during the day? Do they look at other people and just like spit when they're not looking or something? There's so much contempt. They must have incredible contempt for everybody to do what they're doing. That's the only way you can actually operate. You got to have the most astounding contempt for everybody in order to be those people. Power will be connected to the knocked out cooling pumps within hours. The radioactive plume is going to hit the United States, And the journalist is like, just write it down. Tell it to him. Writers and AP will ship it everywhere. And they're like, shut up. It's a meltdown. Don't worry about it. None of your business. Mind your own business. Go talk about politics. Leave us alone. We're nuclear. We're better than you shitheads. 17,000 British nationals could be evacuated as a last-ditch effort are made to stop the nuclear catastrophe. This is a British story. The British really are the worst, though. Every time we cover a British story on nuclear, you're like, why aren't these people in jail for the rest of their lives? They're just disgusting. A lot of them are professors on top of that, right? That are writing that stuff. And they give it to the journalist. The journalist puts their name on the story. They don't write the story. They're not actually there. 17,000 British nationals could be evacuated as the last-ditch efforts are made to stop the nuclear catastrophe, but they're going to connect power in the next couple of hours. Right, guys? Yeah, tell them that. Now go away. Leave us alone. We're nuclear. We're better than everything. We don't need any other species. We just need nuclear. Pro-nuclear is the only species will be left on the planet in the near future. New worst-case scenario says radiation in the capital could harm the humans. Worst-case scenario. Like a meltdown. How about 4? And how about 8 fuel pools? You ever had fuel pools burn before? That gets no love at all. They're insane. These people are actually insane. I don't know why they hate us so much. All I can tell you is they hate us. Just bear with me. I'm going to show you reactor 1 and 2 because I showed you reactor 3 and 4, but I think it's important to show you the other reactors. Reactor 1 explosion was caused by, the explosion was the fuel pool detonated. It actually detonated, burnt for days down inside of it. You got to realize these bigger buildings are 19 stories. They're 65 meters. And you see that cement truck, they were outfitted with a special thing that sprays water. And you can't spray water on a nuclear meltdown because you'll have a steam explosion. So there's no meltdown there. If you're talking about 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature, you spray water in that, you're going to have a detonation, right? Go out and take a piece of metal and heat it up with a propane torch to 1100 degrees or something. Stick it in, don't do this, but if you've done it, stuck it in a glass of water, the glass is going to probably blow up, and you're going to get scalded all over your hands if you don't have any protection on. Unit 2, completely liquefied. So the zirconium cladding, which contains the fuel rods, are zirconium cladded, and inside of that is uranium plutonium pellets, and they're each coated separately in zirconium cladding. Zirconium is what they used to use in the old cameras. So they break the lens in the camera, the air rushes into zirconium and catches fire. Big flash, and then they take the pictures in 1920s and that. And that's the same stuff. So when the water drops, then it flashes, and then that burns at 1800 degrees. It sets the plutonium pellets off and they burn at around up to 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. Any water there is going to cause a detonation. The detonations are caused, by the way, by the nuclear meltdown. That's what created the gas. It was the fuel rods were exposed. And when that happens, these are very fragile. They came out of a reactor. They're very, very fragile. So you have a pulse event. Then now they're releasing absurd amounts. And these buildings, like Unit 2 only blew a panel out. Look at all the panels got off these buildings. And let me explain to you to give you some kind of context. You see this beam right here? If you had an SUV, like a 1990 SUV, big SUV, you can actually park it on that and then turn around. That's how big those beams are. This is a 19-story apartment building, 190 feet, 65 meters. massive buildings. It's hard to appreciate it when you're looking at this. At the top of it was 4 decades of reactor cores. And they're gone. Unit 2 completely liquefied, the reactor core itself. The fuel pool is gone too. It burnt for days inside of that. It went China syndrome deep into the earth fairly quickly, I would imagine, at these temperatures. And we've never seen this before in the history of nuclear power. And Western Tokyo may have been contaminated when the radioactive plume fell to the ground after number 2 reactor core was exposed, says the Japanese professor. So Unit 2 is that one there. And then when you look at, it's really something, isn't it? This kind of contempt that they have for us. So when you look at reactor 1, just look at the detonation though. What created that plume? Because remember, these buildings are 190 feet. So right alongside of reactor 1 and 2, because you say alongside of reactor 2, so when the radioactive plume fell to the ground after reactor 2 core was exposed, that's reactor 2. It 100% melted down, and the fuel pool. I'm dancing on the top of the building up there, so to speak, but I'm not dancing, but that's a heat signature of the building, so it's complete meltdown. But right alongside of that is reactor 3. So is it more likely that Tokyo was contaminated when the radioactive plume fell to the ground after reactor 2 exploded, or reactor 3? Because this one looks more likely, right? This was the plutonium mixed oxide reactor. And so the nuclear scientist's job is to tell the reporter, because the reporter is the one you're going to get to see, not this one, right? So you'll get to see the pretty nuclear scientists, you don't get, or the reporters, you don't get to see the academics very often. But if you understand nuclear and you were trying to make a projection of what they look like, these pictures tonight are pretty darn close. Radiation in the capital could harm humans, worst case scenario, right? That is the worst case scenario right there. That makes Chernobyl look like a paper towel. And Chernobyl's not a paper towel, okay? Chernobyl's brutal. And so the journalist's job is to come out and tell a story that makes the nuclear scientist look like a human, something that breathes here and drinks fucking water like us, right? But it's really difficult because they really aren't human. They are a different species altogether. So it's easy to relate to the journalist because, right, that's the idea of the journalist, is to sell you the lie. So when you say power is going to be connected to the knocked out cooling pumps within hours and the 17th, and first off, if there was nothing else detonated, nothing else blew up, nothing else melted down, reactor 3 means you're not getting anywhere near the other reactors 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are right alongside of it. You are not going there because this was absurd amount of radioactive fallout. You're talking about decades of reactor cores being tossed all over the site at incredible high speeds because it's a plutonium mixed oxide. And think about the fact that the radioactive fallout is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison in North America, for instance. So imagine what it's like at ground zero, where you're getting gamma shines, X-rays, neutron bombardment, beta rays, alpha rays. These will go right through you, and because the volumes we're not talking about something in a test tube, right? Like you see them talking about on TV or in the books or in the universities. We're talking about 6 million pounds. Or like the nuclear bombs are 20, 30, 40 pounds. These are 6 million. And so the toxicity that is not a game. So if you're stood right there behind this car, crouched down, you're getting a lethal dose right away. Your organs will melt. You're going to die very shortly. Because of the shines, just the shine. But remember, it threw assemblies and fuel pools, reactor cores all over the site, not just the running reactor core. Radiation in the capital could harm you. No, this was the 17. This was well established. But the journalist's job is to get the spin from the nuclear scientists, or just have the nuclear scientists send it to the journalist push their name on it, and then they publish it. That's typically what was happening. If there was interviews, The interviews must have been the strangest things imaginable. Power will be connected to the knocked-out cooling pumping system within hours. And so these people are wicked to suggest anything like that. That is just, how can we come up with solutions? Because they don't want to project that they have a flaw, and their flaws are lethal to everything with replicating cells. Another, after absorbed a near lethal dose of radiation, told his wife, "Please continue to live well. I cannot be home for a while." A near lethal dose is interesting, right? Because they want you to think that they resolved it and that these people sacrificed their lives to Fukushima 50. But pro-nuclear, they know the job is there for them to come out and lie. They go to university, get incredible education, and then come out and cut your throat for the rest of their life every chance they get. And laugh about it every day. How is that? How are we supposed to have a future with this routine? And it's a routine for them. They've been doing it for 80 years. 80 years in the nuclear industry. They've been taking great pleasure in just blatantly lying about every facet, because the minute you start understanding the foundation, the basics of this stuff, is the minute you start having a life. Because this is part of your life. You are being poisoned in so many directions. Just from the nuclear industry. It's absurd how many ways they get after you. Just in the smoke detectors you have in your home, the americium 241. And they suggest that somehow it's safe. Like, it's absurd to suggest that americium 241 is safe, first off. And second, these are putting off energy. They're also putting off particulates. You put them in your children's bedroom because you want to protect your child, and you have these particles being released into the bedroom for the rest of the child's life. When they break down, they're so cheap, you throw them in the garbage, and then the garbage burns it, and then you release the radiation directly into the local atmospheres. And when you talk about billions of these produced each year, how much americium-241 are they sending out into the environment? There's billions of little tiny dirty bombs that ultimately harms something or someone. Power will be connected to the knocked-out cooling pumping system with hours. She's like, well, how's that possible? They're blown up. Well, don't worry, just send it to them. Just put that story out there and don't worry about it. This picture was from the 17th. Officials. The officials are not going anywhere near Fukushima. Wearing protective clothing, respirators, heading towards the Fukushima plant. This is on the 17th. Dangerous work. Anybody who's doing that don't understand nuclear meltdown, have no experience in nuclear whatsoever. And they couldn't care less that when these people come home, if they come home, they're going to put that dirty clothes in their laundry and contaminate everything, their children's clothing, their wives, their loved ones, their friends, and themselves are going to be incredibly harmed. And then as they get sick, then the family has to sell a lot of their assets to get them health care, get them equipment, just to give them another year or so. The whole cycle of nuclear is despicable. And when you start realizing it, it's hard to look at them as something that they're not, as a good person. You look at them as the monster they really are, because that's who they are. They really are monsters. Wearing protective clothing, respirators, head towards the Fukushima plant. Well, this is... first off, by the way, that's reactor 2. You're not doing anything over there with reactor 3 emissions, let alone the detonations. So they're like, no, just go ahead and tell them everything is okay. That's what the scientist is going to do. And the scientist knows nobody can go there. And you know that a lot of people will just take the journalist's word for it. And this is what they're counting on, by the way. They're counting on that a lot. Now they're counting on that the majority of people grew up and they're used to Spider-Man, which is created by the industry to downplay or promoted by the nuclear industry. Same as the Hulk. Same as the Simpsons. Simpson was created by the nuclear industry. It was given the funding because of the nuclear industry. The whole concept was based on making nuclear waste seem harmless, right? And 30 years of it, they've succeeded in many generations. This is absurd. This makes Chernobyl irrelevant in the context of, because it's a plutonium mixed oxide facility. It's completely gone, and all the inventories for 40 years are gone. Why would you put the inventories at the top of the building? What kind of sick and demented and twisted engineer, which are probably still alive, drew up a plan like that? 70 of the nuclear plants in the United States are exact replicas of those reactors. So if you have an event, it's going to be the worst it can be. Forever. So if you've seen a nuclear scientist for what they are, this is immediately that's what's you're going to be confronted with. And then the journalist is always going to look very tidy, very polite, very got it together, very relaxed, and they tell you everything's okay. It's like a banana and a potato chip and walked in sunshine. But when you're talking about that and you're suggesting that, hey, everything is fine, don't worry about it. Like, we're nuclear scientists. Who are you going to listen to? You're going to listen to them or some... Well, really, you never ever had another option till we came along with an educational program of somebody that was educating you on the nuances, the minutiae, the details of the details. And then you can extrapolate on your own, can't you? Appropriately and efficiently and effectively and accurately extrapolate what's really going on. And it's terrifying that they've been doing it for 80 years and that nobody's come out and tried to educate the population. It's just, how is that even conceivable? So the radiation levels at plant entrance are at a level which will either kill the worker soon or cause them appalling illnesses in the years to come. At the plant entrance, at the entrance to the site, at the entrance. No, they're going to have power connected. There's too much radio in Tokyo. It's very dangerous. But they're going to have power connected. Everything's going to be good. Have a nice day, says the academic, the pro-nuclear nutjobs. Experts have said that the airtight suits they are wearing would do little to stop the contamination. Little to stop the contamination. Yeah, because the gamma shines will go through 4 feet of dirt, for goodness sakes. And so the nuclear scientists who went to university, incredible degrees, and their job is to write a story and give it to the journalist, and the journalist's job is to sell it to you. Very, very pretty, very handsome. And they come out and lull you into the most dangerous complacency. After 80 years, it's the biggest breach of academics in human history. And the officials, right? They put that caption on there, so a lot of people read it. It's the officials. But those filters are 600 times bigger than the particles they're trying to filter. You'd have to take 600 particles, stick them together to get caught up in their filter. It's completely ineffective. And that the suits would have to be at least 4 feet thick. Lead line and everything else. So these dorks, these people that know the jobs exist, goes to university, gets the degree to get a job, to come out and lie to you. And there's so many of them that we've been doing it for so long. There's so many of them. It's astounding. It's astounding. And then the journalist's job is to look like the good guy and, went and checked it all out and interviewed the scientists, and they did. But their job is to cut your throat too. Write a couple of paragraphs, and they can go on a world cruise with their family because the story was important. They built a big audience, putting out cat videos and cat stories and covering that stuff. And now they need to sell you a lie, and that's what they're doing worldwide. March 11th, government reveals a cooling problem at the Daiichi plant. March 12th, an explosion radiation leak at reactor 1. Leak. Every time you hear the word leak, you're being destroyed. TEPCO injects seawater into reactor 1 and 3 on the 13th. Well, you couldn't, because your lethal doses in seawater, by the way, when you hit these temperatures, is going to cause a steam explosion again. Explosion at reactor 3 seawater. They did spray water. We know that. We got pictures of documentation of it. But it's not what they're claiming, right? pumped to reactor 2. Seawater pumped to reactor 2. Well, once reactor 1 blew up, you're not going near the other reactors. And these all blew up in just a couple of days. March the 15th, Tuesday, explosion of reactor 2. Reactor 4 catches fire. On March the 15th, reactor 4 catches fire. Let me bring up a picture of reactor 4. It didn't catch fire. That's reactor 4 up there in the corner. It went kabooey. They covered that up successfully, though. The official story is neither reactor 3 nor reactor 4 lost anything. And that they're perfectly good inside and got the fuel out of the pools. I'll show you a picture of that too over here. So this is 2013 reactor 4. At the very top of the building, at the very top of that building, multiple nuclear meltdowns, this is what they're claiming it looks like. Explosion reported at reactor 4 catches fire 11:57 a.m. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 6 hours later, there's an explosion. I can't comprehend why it took 4 hours. I'm sure it exploded a little earlier than that. Reactor 4 fire was put out. You can't put out reactor 4. Look at reactor 4. You can't. There was an explosion and the fire. This is the meltdowns. You can't go there and these are burning at enormous temperatures. If you sprayed water in there, you're gonna have another explosion, and you're gonna drive the radiation in every direction. You couldn't do it. You got to let it burn itself out, so to speak. Hopefully go into China system in their world. That's their oh shit plan. Is they're built on rivers basically, right? And so they build all this shale on top of it, so the river still runs, right? Then they level out the whole site, and many times they'll spend $1 billion just leveling, doing the whole engineering of the site, not counting building anything, but just at least $500 million is put into these sites. So if you have the meltdown, it goes down, lands on the old river beds, and then the water flushes it out into the rivers or the ocean. That's their oh shit plan. And because the riverbeds have been running for thousands of years, they know they can walk away, and they'll do that for thousands more. So this is 2013. They're claiming they're at the top of the building, which can't be done, right? Now, another interesting story was I made these pictures today. Let me go backwards. We'll do this one here. So I'm going to come back to the picture. So I made these pictures today. And I was like, because what happened was I had made, I can't remember last night, it was 140 or something. And then today I made 380 or something, yeah. Like this. Now I had to go get another AI. I couldn't sign into the AI that I was using. It just wouldn't let me in. No matter what I'd done, it wouldn't show me the ability to. I won't say exactly what happened because whoever done it to me is listening, I'm sure. And so these pictures that you're looking at, so I created the pictures and they won't work on my system. I was like, well, that's weird because they're the same format of all the other pictures, right? So why won't they work? And so what I done was I took screen captures of all these pictures, and they wouldn't work. And the screen captures is the same machine that I'd done to make these screen captures. So these worked, but these pictures wouldn't show up. I took screen captures of the original pictures. And so then I had to find another workaround to get these pictures tonight. And I worked for 2 hours before I finally figured out how to get these pictures on the system tonight. Because the same screen captures that I'm using to take that is used to take this, and they wouldn't work. But they did. So these are very naughty people that are picking on me. They've been shitting on me for a very long time. And the censorship, you can see the censorship here tonight, right? Censorship here tonight is incredible. I got 24 viewers and 21 likes and 20 votes. And was the Fukushima 50 story subterfuge to stop us from finding solutions to mitigate the 4 nuclear meltdowns. But not only am I censored there and everywhere else, they were able to stop me from using these pictures. They blocked me out of my AI that I've been using to make 3,500 of these pictures. And that the ones that I made today were made with another artificial intelligence unit that I created, and they were blocked from the original pictures, even though they're the same formats as the other pictures that I made last night. The exact same format couldn't be used on my operating system that I'm using right here, which is a special, very unique, very high-end operating system that I'm using that only does what you see me in these shows. I can't download software onto the system. It's just strictly for doing these presentations, doing these lectures and everything else. But yet these pictures are the same screen captures as that picture. Originally, I couldn't use them. And so I'm not going to say how I ended up getting these pictures here tonight, because I know they're going to go after that when they figure it out, right? But how incredible is that? And that's probably what whoever's doing it to me probably looks like right there. I can guarantee you they don't look like this. They're going to look like that, aren't they? And is that why they got offended and blocked those pictures? And so the industry thinks I disrespect them before. You have no idea how much I disrespect you from here on out. The group remained behind after 700 of their colleagues fled when radiation level became too dangerous. So the Fukushima 50 is what they're talking about. The Fukushima 50. And so the scientists are telling the journalists to write that stuff, or they wrote it and gave it to the journalists, right? And this is typically how it always works. Their identities have not been revealed, but experts say they are likely to be working class, frontline technicians and firemen who know the plant best. So, like a fireman doesn't know the plant best, for starters. And why would they be sent to the site instead of... Experts said they are likely to be working class, not academics, not nuclear scientists, not nuclear engineers, not, you know what I mean? But working class, frontline technicians and firemen. Working class. Mostly the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. It's not going to be the chicken eggs, the straw men of the industry, right? You won't see any nuclear scientists broadcasting from Fukushima. It's thought that mostly, even 13 years later, there's only the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and immigrants who don't speak the language. And you're not going to be interviewing them. You're going to be interviewing the highly educated, incredibly articulated apologists. It is thought that mostly older men have volunteered because they have already had children. Clearly, whoever wrote the story, by the way, is deeply involved in the nuclear industry. Is not the journalist. There is no name on this particular story, by the way. Younger workers might be rendered infertile by the high radiation doses, so mostly older men have volunteered because they already had children. If you're getting a dose that makes you infertile at a nuclear meltdown, you're getting a dose that kills you. And the older men didn't volunteer because they know better. They paid the homeless and the destitute and told them it was harmless and innocuous and benign. Oh, it's pretty harmless, yeah, no. We can let... Like, that's as close as you're going to get to a real depiction of a nuclear scientist or a nuclear academic, or a journalist for that part, right there. Well, as the men are called the Fukushima 50, the group is thought to actually be 200 strong. I think it was... well, actually, wait, hang on a second now. There's one messed up industry, I can tell you that much. If you're going to do a study on the worst creatures on the planet, the most dangerous creatures, you would study journalists and nuclear scientists. They're the most deadly creatures on the planet. They kill the most on the planet as the nuclear scientists and journalists. 16,000 workers have quit. Oh, the group is thought to be 200 strong. No, these are not nuclear scientists that quit. These are not workers. These are the homeless and the destitute, the victims of society, and the people that don't even speak the language, the immigrants, the day workers, right? And so this is an incredible depiction of how it actually works. That's incredibly accurate. Working on restarting the cooling system. How are you going to restart a cooling system when you had detonations that threw fuel all over the site? How does that actually work, I wonder? You're going to restart the cooling system when there is no system left. You know, the tsunami wiped out 1,200 miles of the coastline. That the pile in the middle of the Pacific a year later was the size of Texas, 2,000 square miles. That didn't just come out from a small section of Japan's coastline. That was 1,200 miles of the coastline that got yanked out. And at least that much sank. So all the telephone poles, all the infrastructures were gone. There was no way to run power. Working on restarting the cooling system. You can't restart the cooling system. It's just one of those reactors that melted down. You can't get near the other ones. Because they threw radiation fuel rods and assemblies everywhere at very high speeds as projectiles. And so when I was creating these pictures on a new account that I had to open up because I couldn't get into my old account because they hacked me in desperation and just out of contempt, I'm sure, that somebody's honest, because that's like a crime in their eyes. Somebody's honest. That's outrageous. One relative said, "My father is still working at the plant. He says he accepted his fate, much like a death sentence." And that's the scientist that said that, right? They was quoted. That's them there. That's actual real footage of them. I don't understand, how do you think lying the way they lie is the right moral and ethical thing to do? So, like, they show you this picture, you see the fuel pool, not the fuel pool, but the crane. But when you look at this damage here, you got to appreciate what had to happen. Now, there's no containment around the fuel pool for starters. What had to happen? When you zoom in on it, you realize, like, each of these, it's hard to appreciate this because you got to put the scale in there to comprehend the actual enormity. You can actually put an SUV on this and turn it around with a 5-point turn. Back up, go ahead, back up, go ahead, back up, go ahead. And you're basically going to be turning around on these things. That's how big they actually are. So when you think about what caused that kind of damage, right? You can see all these chunks ripped out. These are absurd panels. And some of these are meant to give way, by the way. But the explosion was so severe. That's the so-called reactor 4. But there's nothing, and that's, you can see the plume coming out of there from the meltdown. And it's so fast, it's so, like the criticality is just, it's a millisecond, right? There is no fuel pool there, period. And we know this. Like, we're not guessing. We're not assuming anything. This is well documented. I'll show you some evidence so you can appreciate. And my system catches up a little bit. Yeah, because we are honest, because the world needs somebody that's honest. The world needs someone that's honest. So desperate, it's not funny. And because the media has consumed the planet, And they're cutting your throat every shake and move of it, every sentence. It's unbelievable what the laws are like when you start questioning each paragraph and each sentence. So reactor 3, there's nothing left of the building. This is not a 190-foot building. And every academic on the planet has seen that and knew the reactor core and the fuel pools were gone. But not one of them come out and tried to educate you. Not one. And the ones that should have, that came out and did speak publicly, told you the fuel pools were there. Like Helen Caldicott and Christopher Busby and Arnie Gunnarsson. What they done and continue to do is just, it's one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. So this is reactor 4. The fuel pool and reactor cores at the top, very top of these buildings. This is some of the media. This is a fraction of pretending they're in the building. In 2013, getting fuel out of the fuel pool that doesn't even exist because the top of the building is completely gone. And as you can see in the bottom of the building to your left, this part of the building, look at the guts kicked out of the bottom of the building, right? And if you're anywhere around here, lethal dosage, you see that's put up there, that's robotically driven. Nobody's going up there. This is the actual reactor core. The reactor 4, they were exchanging the fuel and doing maintenance. And so that's the bottom of the reactor core. That's the top of the reactor core. And this was the cover, the seal, the containment. So this was taken off. This should be up around right here where my finger is to. Top of my head, basically. And then the fuel pools are at the same height, right up here. And so what you're seeing right there is the elevator shaft where they would eventually lower the 50,000 ton or 50-ton cast down to the ground, 100,000 pound containers of assemblies, in a decade or something. They would take it out of the pool, put it in these containments underwater, and then they would bring it down and put it on a special truck that was down at the bottom of this shaft. This shaft went all the way to the top of the buildings. And you need to talk about this. You need to have a conversation about this. This is not acceptable. We can't have a future without your participation. You have to participate. You have to come out and say, well, I'll get out of the way. We can find these pictures hopefully at my website. It's a bit screwed up lately, and we're trying to get it back to normal. But I'm having a hell of a time, and I got no excuses. I should be working hard on it, and I didn't. I'm ran into the ground. And I don't care about that, right? It's just as long as we can do this as often as we can to keep the conversation alive. There's no excuses, as far as I'm concerned, that the world is not aware it is. And the reason is because... And so Fukushima number 4, 2013, but this is 2011. There is nothing left of that building. When you see this carnage. If this was your 19-story apartment building, you were on vacation, some tropical island, and your maintenance worker sent you this picture and said, hey, that was your building, right? You would go, call the insurance, or it's all gone, right? There's nothing left. You have no illusions about it, right? If that was an apartment building, everybody was dead, very clearly. But the nuclear scientists is to come out and sell you, and the journalist's job is to be presentable, right? Sell you that lie to make you complacent. This story is very important, by the way. This was in Chiba, and Chiba is right up by Tokyo. And Chiba, by the way, they have 400,000 atoms per square meter in Chiba. Now, this oil refinery that was in Chiba had 11 or 1,200 tons, or don't quote me on the exact number. It was 1,200 assemblies. I don't know. No, it must have been tons or something of depleted uranium stored there, and that's what you see burning is the dull RAM, depleted uranium, low-level radioactive material. And I'm just going to digress for a second. and talk about Israel and Iran. And because I did remember seeing that in the comments section, and I put a notation in the description after. Let me go up here. James Lucid answered him. He was asking, do you think that nuclear war will happen? And James said it's going that way. He's 100% right. Incredibly. And so I didn't bother. I was going to reply, and I seen that comment there, and I was like, yeah, well, that's true. That's it. That's the right comment. That's the exact right comment, right? And it's going to take a couple of weeks to get used to. I never wore prescription glasses before, and I made a mistake. I should have got the progressive with the multi-lenses into them. They were too expensive, though. I couldn't afford them. I'm just a humble person now. And these are, I got a pair of these and a pair of reading glasses is going to be good for my new phone, right? And I'm going to need it anyway, right? Because that's what, they're going to be good for that range. Finally get my eyesight back. This is really good for driving, everything else. And slowly getting used to it. The first day was just bizarre, hellish. I had no confidence at all that this was going to work. But by the end of the day, by the time I got into the city, I was really impressed with colors and license plates. I can read everything perfectly, right? And I was like, okay, this is going to work. You got to suffer it out for a couple of weeks, wear them as much as you can handle it. I'm wearing them all the time, so keep going here. All right, so we're going to talk about Iran and Israel for a second. So what they don't tell you about Iran attacking Israel, because there are two volleys now of missiles. Let's just call them missiles because there's different. They have a lot of different missiles, a lot of older missiles that they used for the first volley. Now they contacted, they made sure Israel knew where they were gonna hit to. They weren't aiming civilian populations. They were aiming at military only. And both times they told Americans and the Israelis that they're going to do it before they'd done it. So they had time to evacuate people out of these areas, which Israel has never done for anybody, really, right? They'll say go over there, and then that's where they're going to bomb, right? But they actually told them. So, and they kept true to their words both times, right? And it's true that they actually have enough weapons that they can take Israel. They can take Israel apart nonstop for several days, and there'll be nothing left. It'll look very similar to Gaza. They have hundreds of thousands of subsonic missiles and supersonic. They have supersonic. So they have hundreds of thousands of these and thousands of miles of deep underground networks. And they have hundreds of thousands of very sophisticated, very accurate drones, pinpoint. And so the second volley that they sent to Israel hit their targets, and Israel couldn't stop them. And when you look at the footage, this is what you're seeing, right? And that's not up for debate. I got the documentation. They hit their targets. Israel couldn't knock it out of the sky. And they're used to knocking out the Katush, or whatever it is, rockets from Hamas in Israel, in Palestine, which they're left there because they got 5 million refugees from Palestine that they got no problems keeping out, but they can't keep out the 10,000 Hamas, right? The 10,000 number is a really interesting number too, because you had 10,000 Mujahideen. Russia was down there for 10 years, right? Then you had 10,000 Taliban. And then for 10,000 Taliban, you wrecked Afghanistan, you wrecked Iraq, you wrecked Syria, you wrecked Lebanon, Gaddafi, Gaddafi. Then you wrecked Syria, and then, because the splinter groups from these 10,000 Taliban broke off, then there was 10,000 ISIS in Syria, they went after them, then there was 10,000 Boko Haram, which was a spin-off from the 10,000 Hamas or Taliban. And so you got millions dead, millions missing, millions in refugee camps, millions unaccounted for. And so when you're doing this kind of routine, in Iraq and Afghanistan and in Syria. You actually exported everybody everywhere else. It was really interesting. And then in Boko Haram, you got millions dead, millions missing, millions in refugee camps, millions unaccounted for. And there was 10,000 Boko Haram. And then the 10,000 Hamas, they allegedly grew to 20,000 or something 30 years later, right? Because they needed a bigger number to justify the slaughter. And so Israel has the Samson option, and the Samson option is if the countries threaten they're going to just send their nukes, get everybody that they don't like. Now, Iran, with the supersonic missiles, can get there a lot quicker than the other missiles have, right? Very accurate, and they've been playing with nuclear for a very long time. Their nuclear bases for weapons are deep underground. You can't get that without nuking that country. You're going to have to nuke the whole country, basically, to get at all those facilities. There's no way you're going to stop it. You can destroy Iran. You can't stop that. Iran, in the next volley, could send 1,000. And they can wipe out both of the big shipping areas that Israel has, because they're not really, in reality, they're not that big, right? You can take out their whole ports. You can take out all their military bases and every facet of the military bases. You can take out all their electricity generation facilities. And if you attack Iran's nuclear, then all bets are off the table. No illusions they're going to attack Israelis, Domoa, and other nuclear facilities. And most likely Iran, because of Russia, is aware of where Israel is keeping their nuclear weapons. So they might even be able to disable some of that. India and Pakistan said they're not going to be sitting in silence. Russia's not going to be sitting in silence. America, Britain, France are not going to sit in silence, despite the current controversies from France. France will get up and go to war if the Americans and the British do, and they got no qualms about doing it, right? And it's not the American themselves, clearly. It's just the military-industrial complex, which seems to be based mostly out of American soil, right? And Lockheed Martin, the rest. There's 10 of the big weapons producers, right? So the question was, do I think there could be a nuclear war? Well, Israel will use nuclear weapons. They threaten it constantly. We've been listening to it for years. And we know how crazy the current administration actually is, right? Benjamin Netanyahu has aligned themselves with the crazies, with the headbangers, with the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community itself, and this particular administration. And has planted a lot of these crazies in positions of authority. And it's just the whole, you got Wonder calling, lamenting that the world won't let them starve the 2.5 million Palestinians. Many supporters in America, government, Benjamin Netanyahu was there for a 1-hour speech at Congress, and he got 55 ovations, standing ovations. So it looks like they're getting ready to pull that trigger, right? 100%. Looks like everybody's happy about it. They were clapping and cheering and whistling. And if that's what they want, that's what they're going to get, because you got 7,500 AirPack lobbyists in America. They all got a suitcase of money to give to any politician. And so if you're a politician and you're not playing ball, they're going to hit you with 7,500 people knocking on your doors, or 7,500 people text messaging you. They got a suitcase of money to give you. You got 7,500 phone calls. You got 7,500 emails, multiple texts, multiple phone calls. They're going to get to you. They're going to get to everybody around them. And if they can't get directly to you, they'll get to everybody around you, and they'll disable you, because you're counted. Those people are dependent upon their team, right? The politician needs a lot of people to support him. And big cases of money, they'll just keep giving you suitcases of money all day till they get you to play ball. If that's what it takes, or you'll have a car accident. And the next person that sits in your chair is playing ball. And there is a prophecy that the world will turn against Israel. We see that happening. And it's 100% artificially created because what Israel is doing is completely unjustifiable. And the way it's been playing out for many years, publicly, and what we're seeing now is quite extraordinary. We see, many governments are turning their back on Israel, and there's a lot, and which influences a lot of the people in each of these countries and other countries to right. So it's once one puts their foot forward and gets away with it, it's easier for the other ones to start doing it too, right? Because that was taboo 2 years ago, or even a year and a half ago. This was inconceivable that anybody would talk about Israel without significant repercussions, right? And because of Fukushima, plumes covered the entire planet, and the catastrophic extinction level event is playing out that most people have no concept of. The amount that's gone into the ocean, there's nothing in the tanks. If you fill up the tanks, one of these tanks, with the stuff you're pouring over the reactor core, you can't get back on the site. You can't build any more tanks anyway. So tanks can't be full, otherwise you wouldn't be on the site. And by the way, we only counted 750, not 1,000 tanks. Quite interestingly, they were all built in 2013. Why would you build all the tanks in 2013? And how can you put everything that's already gone in a tank? And why did you pretend you're in a building that don't exist? Now, the plume that covered the planet, the original plume, this is cesium-137 plume. This is important to understand what I'm going to show you next. This is only a 16-day model of the French government of 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. So that pulses energy 600 feet each of these atoms. So you're talking about an invisible snowstorm of not just, it can't be just cesium-137. Right, there's many other isotopes. There was 1 million of xenon-133 in North America. There was another study of 20 million particles of all things, which are incredibly brutal, of 131 per liter fell on the United States and Canada. And there's 220 million study of the iodine-129 sustained for long periods of time, plumes covering the entire planet. We launched extraordinary times. We launched research expeditions, and we covered the whole Vancouver, British Columbia, all the way to Alaska, over and over, year after year after year. And just took my time and meandered through the entire coastline. I didn't take my time, or I didn't rush anything. And so I towed that boat around, or we drove all over the coastline, and this is 27,000 islands. And I've hit this every way you can imagine. It's hard to comprehend how much energy and time and effort I put in to look at every facet of the ecosystem. 27,000 islands for months and months and months. And what we discovered, because 1 year we just done pinch points, because you got 27,000 islands. The ocean has to go past these pinch points. And so the species to your left are exterminated. We went back year after year, the species didn't recover. So a nuclear war would be a great way in the near future to mitigate the damage caused by nuclear power. Because nuclear power will kill everything rather than get a black eye. So the species to your left, you'll never take those pictures again. My little Zodiac should never have been able to go on a beach because British Columbia at low tide with a 19-foot tide exchange twice a day, this is what you're up against. As you come into the low tide line, you're going to get a bunch of holes in your Zodiac. And that the diversity, because I was a commercial diver for many years, I used to work 6 hours a day in that environment, that exact environment, didn't recover. So the species, if you plow in the whole coastline, a section of the coastline, the species from down below on both sides will fill in that gap. That's how it works. Or, and look at the diversity, the incredible diversity. And think about all these species. They're laying eggs and larvae and everything. That's called phytoplankton in the early stages, by the way. And that would reseed the coastline on its own. Each glass of water would have 1 billion creatures. That would reseed the whole coastline. So we'd done these research expeditions for 6 years. And I was demonized and vilified. I was marginalized. I was attacked. I've been shot at. I've been physically attacked over and over because of the propaganda the industry has put out about me. Makes people, it's easy to believe the lie than it is to believe the truth. And I can, like the plume, this is TEPCO's model just of the Neptunium-239 dispersal based on 20 days. And I've done the research expeditions year after year after year to see if these species, because once we realized they're gone, now we have to, because the reactors really did melt down. They really did lose their inventories. And so the job now was to see if they recovered. And I've done it for 5 more years. And you're talking about 4 to 5 months a year where I'm on the ocean without coming home. And many, many times I got no fuel, I got no money. And many times I had enough to keep going. But many times I had nothing, right? And the realization that we got to document it was like a migratory initiative for my system, because I realized I got to get up there and we got to find out that the species recover. The first year was, in one way, was about, because once I realized this was happening, I had to convince myself that this was symmetrically throughout the whole coastline. And I had to do that because I couldn't accept that it was all gone. And so I assumed I was going to find oasis somewhere. But after doing the entire coastline year after year for 6 years, I can't have an illusion about what happened. I can't pretend this never happened. And I can't pretend that the species came back. And I can't pretend that they're going to come back, because they're not. They would have come back. Because the ocean is a super life with a billion creatures in each glass of water, and the eggs and larvae of all that, and the phytoplankton. So in a glass of water, out of a billion creatures, 100 million of them, 100 million is a phytoplankton, the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain. So that's the most important. And they're at the surface, where the radiation is going to land first, right? So this is a plutonium dispersal based on 20 days. And then when you take the evidence that they pretended they're in a building that don't exist, why would you go to that extraordinary depths to go pretend you're in a building that don't exist? Well, because they caused an extinction event. So when you put all of this together, would they have a nuclear war? There's many reasons to do it. One, to fulfill a fake Bible prophecy that the world will turn against Israel. God will destroy the whole planet, which is in the Torah or the Talmud, I guess. God will destroy the whole planet, and only the people in Jerusalem will go to heaven, but they'll be dead too, right? But they'll end up going to heaven. And then when you see Benjamin Netanyahu in the States, in Congress, getting 55 standing ovations in a 1-hour pure propaganda speech, it's surreal. I've never seen anything else that I can compare it to. But the species to your left are gone. They didn't come back. That's an extinction event. And this is symmetrically, too, in the Atlantic Ocean, where we've done extensive research. And we didn't win all the battles. I get that, right? It's hard to appreciate that I'm not able to do the things I'd done before in the West Coast, right? I don't have that. And I didn't always have it on the West Coast either, that latitude to go do those things. I suffered many times to see it all the way through. With the dire knowledge that we have to make sure this is real. And once you quantified it that it was real, and we have so much headlines, so much study, then come out and just challenge the industry to keep the story alive. We've put so much effort and with good faith into this. The effort we put into this is in good faith for humanity. We're not doing this because it's a game, right? So Chiba, the fire that they had there, it could be 1,200 pounds of depleted uranium, which would still be catastrophic or more, right? So the journalists, they get Nobel Prizes and they get all kinds of accolades. And their job is just to come out and pretend that it's completely harmless. And this is what we have now documented for over a decade straight in these types of presentations, right? and which is right by Tokyo. So there was many different plumes coming through Tokyo, including Fukushima. This was an evacuation center. A 9-year-old is holding up signs with the name of his families and cousins who were missing since March 11. So that story they put up, this is heartbreaking stuff, right? The tsunami pictures are just heartbreaking. The tsunami pictures are really something, right? But I can play video clips of very popular YouTubers, for instance, out there saying it was only 1 foot of water that came through the site when the site was torn apart like the rest of the country. There's so many journalists out there, and every one of them are cutting your throat. Now, originally there was good journalists. There was real journalists, not all of them, but there was real journalists out there during this period. And this was the 17th. These stories were back on the 17th. And these stories are really something. There was a concerted effort. This was the International Atomic Energy Agency had its finger deep in all of this one. To lay the foundation for the cover story. And that story hasn't changed much in 13 years. The official story. And we've been challenging their narratives, and we can really show you the genesis of this whole thing. This whole propaganda message that you're still getting today is firmly entrenched in all media and universities right now. Radiation from Japan has been detected in Chicago and Dallas. And so they do put out some truth there to drag you in, right? And then they'll feed you so much stuff, your brain goes, ugh. And it can't rationalize or extrapolate anything useful after. But when you start really looking at journalists, that's what they look like. Because on the 17th, when hope existed, they come out and made sure could be no hope. They destroyed hope. That's what a journalist done. A female worker who claimed to have been on duty at Fukushima No. 2 reactor when the tsunami struck posted her account of what happened on the internet. And Osuki, who had since sought safety, wrote on the Japanese social networking website translated by the Straits Times, which is very dubious when you hear stuff like that. In the midst of the tsunami alarm at 3 a.m. in the night, when we couldn't even see where we were going, this is somebody at Fukushima, right? At the No. 2 reactor. Right? They put your attention on No. 2 because they don't want you looking at reactor 3 or 4. And it's so dishonest. It's such a disingenuous thing that right alongside of reactor 2, because this is the 17 we're talking about, right along reactor 2 was reactor 3. So nobody was going to reactor 2. A female worker who claimed to have been on duty in the Fukushima reactor 2 when the tsunami struck posted her account. And so in the midst of the tsunami alarm, people were working right to the night. And we carried on working to restore the reactors from where we were right by the sea with the realization this could be certain death. And so the journalist will come out. But when you look at a journalist and you don't look at him like this, you're making a serious flaw, a serious mistake. Everyone worked desperately to try to restore it. But let me show you the tsunami that ran through the site. You can't restore that. Like, if this ran through your house, does anybody believe that they can go back in their house the next day and salvage anything? Right? Just say the very next morning or whatever, daylight. You're not going in there and salvage. That's out in front of the building on the seaside. You can't go back in there. And so when I see pictures like this, I'm really curious of how close I am to the truth, right? Michael Freelander, who had worked in the crisis management of similar American nuclear plants, they have 70 of them, added that the workers were probably eating military-style rations and drinking cold water to survive. It's cold, it's dark, and you're doing that while trying to make sure you're not contaminating yourself while you're eating. I can tell you with 100% certainty they are absolutely committed to doing whatever is humanly necessary to make these plants in a safe condition, even at the risk of their own lives. Britain flees as desperate efforts to cut radiation fail. I don't understand how anybody can turn their back on humanity for their job. I don't understand that. If they're good enough to get that job, they're good enough to get a better job somewhere else, surely. Japan was running out of options to halt its nuclear crisis last night after attempts to water bomb its overheating reactors by helicopter failed. In a sign of growing desperation, the Army was called in to cool the atomic waste stored at the Fukushima power plant with high-pressure water cannons, but radiation levels rose even higher. But remember, they're saying that power is going to be connected in hours. If you're dropping water from a helicopter, you're not going in that site. You're dropping it from a helicopter because you can't get near it, and they couldn't drop the water from the helicopter because of the doses they were getting. So how could anybody work there? Because the journalist told you so, then there must be so. But because critical thinking skills are denied for the average person because they watch TV. And the journalist that told him to lie now gets a Nobel Peace Prize or a key position in government or press secretary at the White House even, like the ABC reporter. However, there was a potential breakthrough when engineers succeeded in connecting a power line to reactor 2. How are you going to connect power to reactor 2? I mean, they're showing you this picture where they're dropping water from helicopters because they can't get close to it, and then they're telling you that to connect the power to reactor 2. Succeeded! Engineers went to a nuclear meltdown and they dodged the nuclear gammas and x-rays and neutron bombardments and beta rays. A pro-nuclear journalist is the most dangerous creature humans ever created. Connecting a power line to reactor 2, this should enable them to restore electricity to the cooling pumps needed to prevent the meltdown, said the journalist. Let me show you these pictures. They must do some laughing, eh? Whenever they see you walking down the road, they must insult everybody they see in their heads because they're so much better than everybody else. You're not going near reactor 2. That's reactor 2 right there. Like, they can tell you what they want, these monsters. These are journalists are monsters, clearly. Nuclear scientists are clearly monsters. They're not going to reactor 2. You see that plume there? You get anywhere handed out, you're instantly dead. Reactor 2 is right alongside of it. This is Medusa. When you start realizing what these people are really like, I'm almost afraid to leave my house sometimes. However, there was a potential breakthrough when engineers succeeded in connecting a power line to reactor 2, said the loving journalist. However, there was a potential breakthrough. They don't hate you. They never liked you. They went to university to get a job to come out and stab you in the back because they knew that job existed. Because their parents probably done the same thing. As the crisis entered its 8th day, the Japanese government is facing growing international condemnation for its handling of the world's second worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. So, to suggest that 4 reactors with 8 fuel pools, with at least 4 reactor cores in each fuel pool, is nothing compared to Chernobyl. That's the official story. See, on the 8th day, it was the 17th, wasn't it? The story came out, so it's the 7th day. Once removed, that's a nuclear scientist. That's a journalist every step of the way. Chernobyl was brutal, by the way, but it ain't no Fukushima or anything close to it. And the fact that they were trying to drop water on the reactors when they were already gone was it was just meant to give false hope, to lull everybody into this complacency. Where's the poll to here? Let's bring that up for a minute. How are we doing there tonight? Was Fukushima 50-story subterfuge to stop us from finding a solution to mitigate the 4 nuclear meltdowns? Yeah. And that's the most terrifying thought imaginable. So, these people didn't want us to come up with solutions because they couldn't do it. So therefore, if you were to be aware of it, you wouldn't want nuclear no more, and that they couldn't be the monsters they really are. So they come out and lie to you and then pretend to their friends and families and themselves that they're good people. The majorities will wake up in the morning, go to the mirror, and they'll scream at the mirror that they're a piece of shit. And when they get it out of their system, they'll dress and go back to work because they know that it's the worst humans conceivable. Clearly, there's nothing left, and we know that because of the pictures from 2013. There is nothing left. The world's second worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. They went to school to get a job to come out and stab you and the rest of the planet and the 8 million species to death because they're too much of a coward to do it face to face. Another 140,000 people living within 18 miles have been told not to leave their home, which is the worst thing can happen to you. Yeah, don't leave. I get a Nobel Prize for telling everybody to stay in their home and be poisoned. At least in their mind they do, right? The worst thing you can do is stay in your home because you still got to breathe, you still got to drink the water. And your filtration systems can't filter that radiation. Yesterday, thousands headed to Tokyo's airport to leave the country for whichever destination they could find. Because it's like a banana and a potato chip, right? A week after the earthquake, tsunami authorities still struggling to bring it back from the brink of disaster. Well, the brink of disaster is long gone, past. It was a disaster on day 3, 4, and 5. And most of the inventory was released into the environment at that time. What was it they said on RT?
Fact that the reactor in Japan is 100 times more powerful than the one in Chernobyl, and
each reactor core was equal to 100 Chernobyls because it's pure uranium, pure plutonium. Chernobyl was a graphite reactor. And Fukushima is pure uranium, pure plutonium. And in the case of reactor 3, it was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor core, which is 2 billion times more toxic than the first meltdowns. Just come out and sell you the lie and go home and pretend that they're good people. Or not. They know they're not good people. They're not kidding themselves. They went to get the job, school to get an education, to get a job, to make sure you didn't have a future. They're the strangest people imaginable. Driven by something they don't understand. 4 of the 6 nuclear reactors at the site have been hit by explosions and fires, which sent clouds, and they're writing the story laughing their heads off, which sent clouds of low-level radiation into the air. Can you imagine writing a story, low-level radiation from a nuclear meltdown? 4 reactors, 6 reactors have been hit. 4 of the 6 reactors hit by explosions of fires, which sends clouds of radiation of low level. It's unconscionable into the air. So don't worry about it. It's leaky. The world's second worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. Who are you going to believe? See, because most people, like, if he's telling his story, I'm telling my story, they're going to believe him. He's got a suit on, he's got a tie on, he's very handsome. And he's in the media, he wouldn't lie to you. And I've had people say that to me. Dana, the media wouldn't lie to you. Because the other media would come out and expose him, Dana. The universities, the professors would expose him, Dana. Like, you know, don't call me anymore. 4 of the 6 nuclear reactors at the site have been hit by explosions and fires. Yeah, but it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in sunshine and skipping rocks on a pond. Right? Because they come out, this is what you see. You see the academic and the doctors or professors and the journalists, and they're all smiling, they're all prettied up, and they're saying, no, it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in sunshine. A radioactive plume from the crippled Japanese nuclear reactor could reach the west coast of American highway as soon as today. It was like a banana, so don't worry about it. We covered them. Endless journalists doing that. Courage of the Fukushima 50 amidst work. So on the 17th, they were saying the plume was going to hit America. It was 6 days later. But don't worry, because it's going to be harmless. You can trust me, I got Nobel Peace Prize. And the degenerate UN data assumes that the radiation spewing from the wrecked nuclear reactor at the continuous rate informs a rising plume. Expected to hit Southern California, into Nevada, Utah, to Arizona. It could blow 5,000 miles to the Pacific, increasing radiation levels. And as U.S. citizens fleeing a potential nuclear disaster arrive back on American soil, radiation from Japan has been detected in Chicago and Dallas. And travelers landing at the Chicago O'Hare Airport and Dallas Fort Worth Airport are said to have tested positive for a minute amount of radiation on the 17th. And CBS, which is insidious, Seth Dorn done, pretending he was on Reactor 4, reported radiation also been detected in the air filtration system of at least one flight and on the luggage of passengers arriving back from Japan. Well, the luggage is in their houses. How could they not be radioactive before the luggage? And the danger of more radiation arriving on flights from Japan is set to increase. But see, they tell you so many lies. And this was a side banner where this stuff was to on the way down. Because the idea is to give you highs and lows. It's a very long story. There was another story yesterday that I thought was important. I might want to share with you. It's a short story. Hi, everybody. Was Fukushima 50 story subterfuge to stop us from finding solutions to mitigate the 4 nuclear meltdowns? Well, yes, it was. This is really important. Junk food consumption during adolescence has irreversible impact on your memories, your children's memories. Junk food does. The excessive consumption of fast food is not only a public health issue, but also a threat to our cognitive abilities, according to a recent study conducted by researchers at the University of Southern California. The research highlights the devastating effect of a diet high in fat and sugar on memory, particularly in adolescence. And a study conducted on rats found that young rodents fed an imbalanced diet showed persistent memory disorders even after being switched to a healthy diet. And that these rats did not show any improvement in their cognitive abilities, unlike the control group that followed a balanced diet from the start. And so the results demonstrate that the damage caused by junk food for the brains of adolescents could be irreversible. So then, think about this here. Canada lifts restrictions on Japanese food imports. August 14, 2011, 93 days after Fukushima melted down. 55 countries banned the food in 14 prefectures. Canada wasn't one of them. They removed all restrictions. So most of the radioactive food was shipped to Canada for many years after Fukushima. The most radioactive food, because they didn't stop growing food. Each of these prefectures are producing at least 1 billion pounds of rice a year. And so 14 prefectures I've highlighted there banned. The food was banned by 55 countries for a decade. As you can see in this picture, this is from the mainstream media. They're actually harvesting food right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. Try to wrap my mind around that statement. And that food was shipped to Canada. And so that study talking about junk food is particularly worrisome for Canada. There was some good journalism, though. We might get a few of them here coming up. Not all of them, by no means. Concerned half of Japan to be covered in nuclear waste. 60 and older should be prepared to die at the power plant because it broke down. Because your nuclear plant broke down. Everybody 60 years of age and older should be prepared to die. Can you wrap your mind around that statement? Have you ever heard any connotations like that for a coal plant or oil plant or a gas plant or geothermal or solar? No. 60 and older should be prepared to die. In fact, Tokyo Vice Governor suggested There should be a Fukushima draft, not just 16 older. Everybody should have to face it. And TEPCO, send us people who don't mind dying. Do you think you ever talk to nuclear scientists, nuclear academics, nuclear students, or pro-nuclear community? Or were you talking about your loved ones, or the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language? And with plumes hitting North America at 1 million atoms per square meter of xenon-133, which is just unbelievable on your lungs and bones, and 20 million particles of radioactive iodine-131 in another study. Another study of 220 million atoms of iodine-129 per liter. These are absurd numbers. They're going to saturate the thyroid glands of every species. And the radiation data from the Seattle area survey withheld by the feds. And then another study of xenon-133 at 450,000 times detection levels in the same place where they're going to withhold the studies in Seattle. Documented. This is all documentation. This is incontestable. This is unassailable. Tends to concentrate in the testicles. 360 plus atoms of radioactive sulfur, the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs, the hot particles, per day may have been inhaled by Californians after Fukushima. Well, it's true for California. It was true for everybody else in North America and every bird and insect and everything else. And it wasn't just North America. Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan. People should stay home or immediately take off their clothing. That, like when you come out and you're saying that in your country, this is catastrophic to what's really going on. The radioactive rain in South Korea caused 130 schools to close. And a study out of France, this study was 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137, and that model was updated. That's from the French government. This is the model of 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 based on 31 days. This is the holy grail of oh shit. Whenever you see this, the first thing in your mouth should be, oh shit. And that they came out, the South Korean recently came out last year and said that this was a professor at the Department of Nuclear and Quantum Engineering saying that it was like throwing 3 grams of sugar into the ocean. A professor of nuclear and quantum engineering saying that the emissions from multiple nuclear meltdowns was equal to 3 grams of sugar, and that the most that got out was equal to 2 grams of tritium. I don't understand that kind of contempt. I don't know how that is acceptable, because I can't imagine it is. If the population was aware of it, I can't imagine for a second that they wouldn't be looking for his head on the platter. Officials admit, but in order for him to get away with it, all the academics and media had to participate in the lie. Officials admit decontamination only for reducing external exposures. And the U.S. government, radioactive material from the reactors 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. It's like explosions going off in your cells and blowing holes in your chromosomes, your DNA, and your cells every second for the rest of your life. And Japan Times column, as the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time. There's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. Are you seeing an increase in Alzheimer's and dementia and autism and diabetes and Down syndrome? Are you? Huh? Schizophrenia? Huh? Are you? You know I'm right. 1,000 years from now, contaminated water from Fukushima may be still entering the Pacific Ocean. Well, how are you going to keep it out when it went China? A lot of it went China syndrome. And the congenital heart disease, congenital malformations, heart disease operations rose 14.2% per 100,000 live births. Another 14,200 children have to have surgeries. That was a study from 2019. But what else could be the catalyst for that if not Fukushima? And this is emblematic of radioactive sickness. And 35.8% of Fukushima children with thyroid tumors of 2 centimeters or bigger. 13,646 out of 38,000 when pre-Fukushima was 1 in a million. In other words, it's 358,000 out of a million children will have thyroid tumors, which means they're producing radioactive hormones for the rest of their lives. That's nice and natural, right? And then in the first year, there was 865,000 extra cancers. And not everybody got health care. Not everybody's diagnosed. And cancer isn't the only thing you're going to get. There's endless diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. And at the Ambassador Murata writes to the UN Secretary General, it's no exaggeration to say the fate of Japan and the entire planet depends on the number 4 reactor. And there's the number 4 reactor, and the media pretending they're on top of the building. How is it acceptable to have all your media hate your guts and do everything in their power to destroy your ability to even try to have a future, or your loved ones, or the 8 million species? Why is that acceptable? How is that even possible? I don't even want to guess. But this is what's going on. And sitting in silence is not a solution. And while I'm waiting for you to do your thing, I'm going to keep doing my thing. And there's nothing easy about the things I do. There's nothing easy about it. But James did make it a bit easier. James donated $330 the weekend, which changed the game for Dana. And James, by the way, just posted another bunch of songs up on his YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night and a great day tomorrow. I'm going to play one of James Lucett's songs that we can't seem to get enough of around here. And he's got many songs up there, many different genres. And he's just posted another bunch during the weekend. And this is good stuff, anti-nuclear music. Just download it, keep it regardless. Because that'll come in handy in the future. It's all copyright-free music. That's for this particular application on top of that. And we're going to play one of his songs right here. The closing song. If you make it this far in the video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. We're going to close the poll down. Was Fukushima 50-story subterfuge to stop us from finding solutions to mitigate the 4 nuclear meltdowns? I strongly believe I provided clearly enough evidence to quantify that assertion, to document that assertion. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody on the next show. And hang around. Listen to this song. This is a great song. If you like the song, give us a thumbs up. And consider making it easier for me to do things I'm doing. 100% of your funds makes me independent and game on. The journalists will take your money and weaponize it and destroy your future and all your loved ones too. So if you like puppies and you like the world, consider donating. We really do need the help, okay? And we'll see you on the next stream. Have a great night, everybody.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.